Half-Life 1 was a revolutionary game, and it is the 25th anniversary. Valve just released a documentary commemorating the moment and talking and reflecting with the original staff who made the game, having them all reunite and talk about what it was like to make that masterpiece of a first-person shooter. That opening intro of the game where you're on the train going into work as Gordon Freeman into Black Mesa, as you ride through the whole facility, which will become your path that you follow throughout the game, that whole sequence to the player at the first playthrough, that first time you're ever laying eyes on it, it makes you think that the developers must have had this amazing big map drawn out and laid out of the whole Black Mesa facility to achieve that interconnected feeling. That is not what happened at all. They were making all those parts of the game in isolation, coming up with creatures in isolation, and then trying to figure out how to put the AI in the maps and the levels that were already being made. There was very little sense of cohesion when it came to how the team was all working together to create these play spaces, characters, weapons, and environments and encounters. But to the player, when you're on the game, it feels like it must have been so well thought out, so prepared and planned this way. And that is the result of amazing project management, game design, and engineering. Oh, and 12 to 18 hours of time crunch every day for weeks. They all kind of reminisce about how haphazard the game was created and how wild and crazy and uncertain that time was making the game, because a lot of them did not really have a clear idea of where they were headed. There are several things that are departments for games nowadays that were done by literally a single person. Everything. In fact, the person who did all of the sound and music for the game also helped with some of the level design, which is absolutely insane. The woman who did the textures in the game, she did all of the textures in the game. All of them, except for a few vending machines. She would go out and travel, take photos for reference of things that she saw out in the real world. She took those reference photographs and scanned them into the game to make a lot of the textures, probably saving a lot of time since she didn't have to hand paint everything, which was common at the time. The game, 3 months almost before release, was still not in a great state and was not very fun and had a lot of disparate elements that had yet to really coalesce into a fully fledged experience that a player could really sink their teeth into. So trying to figure out how to bring all these pieces together in just a few months before shipping was probably absolutely nerve-wracking. In fact, it was nerve-wracking. But you prioritized what things needed to be fixed or finished and what could go undetected, maybe under the radar, maybe we don't talk about those little bugs, little issues. Little glitch, maybe? This little G-Man glitch? One such example of that triage, if you will, at the time of how they prioritized what needed to be finished or fixed or fleshed out and polished was the Zen levels, the infamous to some Zen levels of Half-Life 1 at the end of the game. They really are on record in the new documentary, pretty much saying the Zen levels were very ambitious in scope. They were even more ambitious in scope at the start of development of, what those levels were intended to be and how crazy they were intended to be. But with the production issues the game had. Not enough resources were really diverted to, like, finishing those Zen levels, because they were so demanding of more resources and more time and attention, because those elements were so different from the rest of the game. There was not a lot of asset reuse that you could do to kind of cut corners or save time. They just kind of had to put it out, and it really got close to them having to almost cut the Zen levels entirely, but they had already done so much work in terms of the art and assets and stuff like that they just felt like they wanted to keep it in, roll with it as best they could, because it was so cool. It was cool enough to try to keep in and at least show the players. In their words, feels like a first draft area of the game, unfortunately. They also said that they were afraid it would really kill the fun for some players. And also, it's the end of the game anyway, so if they do stop playing, they played most of the game, I guess. Which is a gutsy move. Definitely a gutsy move on their part. One that I don't know, have fully lived down even to this day. And that seems kind of apparent in their tone when they're discussing them.
Freeman, right? I've got a message for you. Make sure you don't...
Despite these various challenges and problems along the course of the Half-Life 1 development, the team managed to pull it together and create an amazing game. A small team of young, hungry, ambitious game developers and artists, mixed with the constraints of finite resources, finite technology of the time that restricted what they were able to do in making a game for the technology of the time, and the biggest limitation, which was time itself, having a strict set deadline when the game needed to be complete and tough decisions needed to be made, things cut out of the game entirely on the cutting room floor in order to make that deadline. All of the technological and resource and time restrictions that led to a company like Valve being able to ship an amazing product like Half-Life 1, they're not very much restraints today. Now you can make games that are hyper realistic with Unreal Engine 5, which anyone can license. You can hire programmers on Fiverr out the wazoo and churn out independent contractors if you really wanted to get a project done. And when it finally does launch, it doesn't have to be polished or finished, because you can keep issuing updates through the power of the internet for years to come to finally get it to where it should have been at launch. And this is the core issue in a lot of ways with modern game development.
What the hell is going on with our equipment? It wasn't meant to do this in the first place.
And it's why Half-Life 1 ended up being so good, because despite all of the constraints in technology, staff, time, and everything like that, they still managed to make an amazing product, because those very limitations that existed actually help shape the game as it was. It helped funnel their attention and their time and energy and effort and resources, their intrigue and creativity, funnel it into some scope that was obtainable, that was achievable and realistic for the time. Now, with infinite possibilities as far as the ceiling of technological fidelity is the highest it's ever been, near infinite, and the possibilities of computing power are so great in comparison, and access to all these resources, infinite timelines, all this expanded scope only actually serves to limit the real creativity, because the real creativity in the artistry and the engineering and the programming and the project management, it comes from the restrictions. It comes from having to do things in a pinch, having to figure out creative solutions to big problems fast so that you can make your deadlines, so that you can go back to your family and stop crunching. And I know these conversations always come back to crunch time and how not good that practice is in software development. And it's always taken a toll mentally, emotionally, physically on the people who have to go through crunch time and keep late hours making a game and finishing it. But with the crunch time aside as being this unfortunate necessary evil a lot of time, look, you're always going to crunch. Like a lot of industries have crunch. If you're a business owner, you're crunching. If you're building a house, sometimes you're crunching. Like there's a lot of industries, there's a lot of types of projects and types of work, even if you're just a salesperson and it's near the end of the month, you got to crunch to make a few more sales so you can hit that next tier in your bonuses and commissions. Look, it is the same across the board, and every industry and job position for the most part has crunch-like structures, and we're figuring out more ethical ways to do it now. And I think there's a balance where we can have the ethics, lack of crunch, still have some quality of life, work-life balance and all that. But you gotta have the right people in place. If there's anything that Valve has shown, it's that you have to have hungry, visionary, talented individuals who are really passionate about the work they're doing. And oftentimes when you're passionate, you don't mind as much doing the 12 hours at the office. Not always. Sometimes you have a new baby, and that's really tough. And I have no idea what that's like, just full stop. But sometimes when you're passionate, you enjoy the crunch. You enjoy keeping those long hours because it's what you love to do. It's what you're passionate about. If this industry is to break out of this mobile market gotcha game style of development and marketing and monetization and sales and quality, and get away from this disposable feel to all these new modern games, then we're going to have to return to some of those core principles and tenets that led to the successes of games like Half-Life 1. And that's something that I've maintained on this channel, that I want to keep talking about, and that I have been talking about for a while. Maybe waterfall development style isn't realistic for modern game development and software development because of the advances of technology and how easy it is to issue hot fixes and updates and everything like that to keep a game lively and having new content be churned out so that it brings players back, increasing engagement and everything like that. Look, I get it. And maybe that's very useful if used properly, if used not to bleed players of their money, but to actually give them a better and better experience year over year. And maybe being more intentional in the type of help that you're finding to staff. Not easy. It's not easy to find good help and good talent. Maybe not relying on 1099 contractors and hire full-time staffers who have an actual shared, cohesive, understandable vision of the project and are there from start to finish and actually understand the entire process and timeline. And you don't have this revolving door of people who have to interact with your code base, figure everything out just to be let go in 12 months or 16 months in the middle of the project. And that is the norm at some of these companies. It's what led to issues like in Halo Infinite and how problematic that game was at launch. And that's decently well documented. And maybe, just maybe, making the most beautiful, high fidelity, lifelike, realistic looking game with this infinite scope of world and that you can do anything and go anywhere and it's so expansive and it's so emergent, maybe that upping the ante every single time, maybe that lack of constraint in your resources and your scope and your tech, maybe that's not helpful either. Maybe add some restrictions, maybe impose some artificially on yourself or on your project or your team, and see what kind of creative solutions and ideas come from that limitation. Because some of the best ideas, not just in game development, but in film and music and everything like that, some of the best ideas and implementations have come from needing to problem solve in a limited scope with limited resources and with constraints on what you're working with or what you can do. And sometimes those constraints inform some pretty interesting ideas and solutions. All in all, it's been a good 25 years of playing Half-Life 1, and we've gotten many sequels since. I hope a Half-Life 3 someday. Unfortunately, there was no mention of it in this documentary that Valve released. But if you haven't played Half-Life 1, I definitely recommend going and playing it. And if you have played Half-Life 1, I recommend going and watching the Valve documentary because it is a trip. It's definitely a trip. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I'm Sly Elliott, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching and giving me some of your time today. It means the world to me. I love making content like this, and I'm going to continue to do so. Comment down below and tell me what you thought about the video, what I talked about. Give me your thoughts. I would love to hear it. I try to respond to them all. Like the video if you enjoyed. Lets me know you want to see more content like this. Subscribe to the channel. It's free. It supports me in the channel. It lets me know I'm doing a good job. And hit the bell as well to be notified when new uploads come out. I'll see you on the next video, and I hope you have a great day.